China is in an AI lobster great leap forward, and if you don't understand what I'm saying, stick around and I'll definitely explain it to you. But I don't say this lightly, but back in 1958, everybody was literally told to make steel by the CCP, and backyard furnaces were everywhere. They literally melted their pots and pans and tools. Everything was about production. And yeah, it boomed on paper, but it was the most useless scrap. And now fast forward to today, everyone and their dad in China is installing OpenClaw AI. Now, the same energy saved mass participation, so the question becomes, what comes after this? Is it going to be some sort of a tech 3-year great famine? Because right now, this momentum of AI in China is a frenzy. It quite looks familiar to, well, the Great Leap Forward. But this time, it's a tug of war on opportunity. Look at this. You had 1,000 people lining up in front of Tencent's office in Shenzhen. Engineers are helping random citizens install OpenClaw on their computer. Well, at least the versions from Chinese tech companies, that version of OpenClaw AI. So people literally, we had people from like, the 20s, 30s, but all the way up till their 50s and 60s lining up to get claws. People are all in. And they even came up with a name for it, raising a lobster, because the OpenClaw logo looks kind of like a lobster, or maybe it is a lobster, but also because you're literally growing it from zero, from scratch, something that you can customize to your own work sort of flow and capabilities. And so these AI agents are obviously really useful. It's like the big thing in AI space, right? Now the hype comes from individuals who ran this AI agent, automated their stock portfolio or stock market buying and selling, made a lot of money off of it. Suddenly Chinese people are like, yeah, this is the next big moneymaker. And not just individuals, local governments, companies, everybody seems to think that this is going to be what comes next. Everybody sees it as an opportunity to make money. Now, to understand this AI craze in China, you kind of have to understand what AI fundamentally means for Chinese society. It's not really about money, it's about survival. In fact, making money in China is a very interesting thing because there's a caveat to making money. China's economy is actually very inflexible. It's made up of these systems that the central government tells people that they have to follow. Now, before we go deeper into this, since we're on the topic of AI, okay, so to a foreigner, China's system that appears vibrant is actually quite rigid. Now, sure, you hear a lot from CEOs or tech gurus talking about how China is always at the forefront of early tech adoption, how China is already doing so much on this and that in the tech space or the AI space, how there's hundreds of companies suddenly popping up already into something that maybe Americans or Western countries are just getting started. But this phenomenon is not necessarily an indicator of the growing or transformation of the economy. Because the trend is this. Over the past 50 years, opportunities and survival has been tightly linked during the reform and opening up period. Any small shift in society can suddenly become the next big thing for people to rush toward. The system is inflexible because most government resources go to state-owned companies, and private sectors get basically the crumbs. So this hasn't really changed even during the so-called economic freedom era before, like, say, 2015, 2016. In China, they call it a racetrack because CCP policy, again, prioritizes state-owned enterprises, resources, and policy support for the private companies are quite limited. So you can imagine the space is carved out mostly for the state-owned stuff, so the competition in the private space, it's like a brutal race, right? It's a race to survive. So in that kind of environment, something like OpenClaw becomes instantly hyped because people believe that they can make money from it. They can make money in a new space where maybe people haven't caught up yet. And so the reason you see why there's such vibrance, quote unquote, is because there's really not a lot of opportunities and everyone's really struggling for the same piece of the pie. China's eagerness towards AI isn't just because people deeply appreciate and understand the technology. It's because they believe that by adding this bit more, they can become the next big thing. Now, let's just compare it to the Western world, right? Maybe today, not knowing AI, coding, or software, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't find a job or survive. Yeah, sure, the college graduates are probably going to want to have an AI requirements caked into the curriculum so that they're prepared for today's job market when they're young, but you can still make a stable living as an electrician or a mechanic or a small-time business owner or medium-sized, who knows. But the point is, there's still some safety nets here, welfare systems in place, policies that support small businesses, structured industry planning in an economy that has evolved over the span of, say, 70 to 80 years or even 100 years. But in China, it's very different, right? China's economy is not stabilized in that sense. The government expects growth in these new sectors all the time. And so instead of providing strong social welfare to its people, it instead allocates more resource towards things like subsidies for top-tier companies, because again, the goal isn't to optimize individuals' well-being, it is to maximize national competitiveness in this current competition against the US and other countries. So for companies and individuals to survive in this kind of environment, they chase whatever looks good, whatever is the next big thing. And right now, that is OpenClaw, right? AI agents. Another layer to this is what you would essentially get after the hype, okay? Because this isn't just about people installing OpenClaw or whatever comes next. This is where the resources are not going to come here anyways, right? It's a rigid system. So what they're always fighting for is basically the same amount. And because they're pouring a massive amount of money into tech and military, let's put a number on that, right? So every year, China officially spends about 3.3 trillion yuan on research and development. That's roughly around $460 billion going to things like AI, semiconductor, and advanced technology. On top of that, you have the military budget, which something like 1.7 to 1.8 trillion yuan, $250 billion. Again, the numbers are probably much higher than this, but you're looking at something of a trillions of dollars flowing into the top-down priorities, and then spendings for, say, going back to the people, like healthcare, pension, social security, that's only about 6% of China's GDP compared to something of a developed nation, which would go towards 20% or maybe even like 30%. So that's the imbalance, right? Because China can squeeze the big portion of its population in this 996 work culture, maximize the amount of juice that they can get out of these people. But you have other problems like the aging population. You have the declining population. You have people who need support with healthcare and pension. And those things actually will place the system into a debt in terms of spending, which they simply are just ignoring. It's not that they're not wanting to do it, but they know that they can't afford to do it. Because coupling with other things like the cost of running the government, right? On top of the military research for tech, you also have stabilizing factors that you need to put into a huge amount of money in, such as censorship apparatus, the Great Firewall, police, the internet monitoring, all of these things, that's an extra cost, right? So when you put everything there, the foundation of society, there's a gap. And that one in short term doesn't look too bad because you're hiding it with all these momentums and innovation. But long term, thinking maybe 20 years down the line, you're risking running into a kind of a famine, right? The 3-year famine after the Great Leap Forward. Okay, I'll explain more in a bit, but now just so you understand the concept of China's so-called tech enthusiasm, it's based on survival. It's not based on the actual development. Because in China, a lot of businesses struggle with 3 things, right? Technology, they don't have it. Fundings, they don't have it. And money-making or opportunities, they don't have it. So in that sense, everyone's chasing the same fruit. And whoever gets it, obviously very lucky for them. So let's talk specifically about the lobster craze a bit more. So on Chinese hiring apps in the earlier months, right, you could get people who you pay $300 or 300 yuan to install this on your computer. And then days later, you're paying the same people to uninstall it from your computer. The people that made some money installing this stuff saw an opportunity. The engineers who uninstalled the stuff also saw some opportunities. Apparently, like at the height of the installation craze, like people made millions of yuan in a single day just installing and uninstalling OpenClaw, right? Because then the government was like, oh, there's some security risks. We're banning it from being used on official government devices. So people kind of got scared. Sure, there's security risks to the AI agent because you need to give it a lot of deep access on your computer. But again, this is just what I'm talking about. It's just like, it's very quick, right? Everything is a new social movement in China. But it does fit the context we were just talking about. Local governments also, they're chasing growth. They're out of money. They need new opportunities because real estate is not going anywhere. So for example, in Shenzhen, they're offering subsidies up to 2 million yuan or around 290,000 USD for companies building around OpenClaw in what is called a one-person company or OPC. Shanghai is holding competitions for AI companies. In Wuxi City, in Wuxi area, they're running a 3-year AI startup campaign. Now, I expect way more local governments to follow this trend, but local officials see this as an opportunity to create wealth in the area that they're in turn generate a lot of these achievements or records so they can get promoted, right? Making it look like there's vibrance, there's eagerness in the system, and that's how you attract funding from the central government, subsidies. And so desperation, if you're really talking about the truth, what they get, obviously they show some results on paper, they start all of these AI craze, and yeah, eventually they get promoted. And then the central government is a little bit more cautious, or to accurately put it, Xi Jinping needs to see it to approve it. Right now, this type of tool. So you combine all 3, right? Individuals chasing opportunity, survival, local governments chasing achievements and growth, central government watching cautiously, you get something that looks very similar to what we saw before. Essentially, every time there's a new wave and opportunity, AI, chips, smartphones, millions of people rush to the same at the same time. Some examples in 2023, everybody was trying to become a live streamer in China because that was the last industry that you could still make some money that wasn't being heavily regulated or simply that people were still willing to spend money in. 2024, everybody jumped on the EV train, right? Every company was making EVs in China. In 2025, every company was building AI chatbots like DeepSeek. That's China today. 2026, it's going to be AI agents. Maybe in 2030, it will be spaceships. But the point is, every industry is under pressure. So when you can't make enough money, and when something new appears, why wouldn't you jump to it? Everybody flocks to it. And because they have a tendency to oversaturate, they actually have a unique term for this. It's called involution or nejuan, which is basically like people are competing against each other. It drives down prices. The only thing that China has that's kind of unlimited, right, in terms of the expendable resource is human capital. Life force. People are willing to do the 996, whatever it takes. So that's what drives their economy fundamentally. And if you're trying to survive in that system, you don't wait, you adapt, you jump in early. And then we're talking about the scale of hundreds of millions of people, or at least half of the country, I would say. So this is just another survival response. Now here's the problem, right? AI agents, they're supposed to enable you to reduce your workload, or you can do some other stuff while they take care of the basic stuff. But the one-person company, you're actually doing the opposite of what I would think the Chinese government would want, right? Okay, so let's imagine a scenario. You have a bubble tea shop. You have two people that works in the shop. You have the cashier, then you have the drink maker. Now with OpenClaw AI, you get rid of the cashier. You just take orders through AI, and you just need one person instead of two to run this bubble tea shop. Now you've actually cut the workforce in half. And another example is if you open a restaurant or a delivery shop, you're making some food. Now all you need is just a single person and a microwave, well, a computer too, but you have OpenClaw take all your orders, become your online chat agent. All you have to do is just microwave pre-made meals and you just put them into delivery containers and people will pick them up. So you effectively have reduced another industry into a very simple, one person company, right? And that's really not good for China today. It's good for consumers because you'll have hundreds of, thousands of stores popping up making drinks or making food. It will drive the price down for consumers to order delivery, but it's really bad for the population in China that struggles, right? I'm talking about the lower end or the 600 million people that live in poverty. What are they going to do? Traditionally, they might get a job at a bubble tea stand, but now they are told that AI has replaced them. So now, remember that problem with how in a long term, because you don't have a social welfare system, the great famine, right? That's bound to happen when you're so into this AI thing. There's even controversies in the West about what could potentially happen to people's jobs. And are you going to make those people, transition into an AI field? Probably not. But what you're doing is you're diluting the industry, and the system is like, sure, you got more opportunities to make money, but from the government's perspective, you're not solving the job issues, you're not solving the fundamental ideas of the economy, which goes back to my point. This just looks really good on paper. And that's it. That's the great leap forward. Everybody's doing it. Everybody does it at the same time. The numbers look great, but the actual concept, or sorry, the effects of it, it's the same as after 1958, which is famine. Okay, so this is honestly pretty interesting because I don't expect China to change because again, their system is just like that, right? It's an illusion. It appears great to some people to think that China is doing wonderful when it comes to AI, when it comes to other things, but people they got no other choices, right? That's really it. Like there's no other choices. Like whether you go with, whether this thing comes up next or the other thing comes up next, whatever happens, people are going to want to survive. And so like you can't really blame them for all going to this, even if they're 60, like people always think of this fear of missing out idea, but for China, it's really just tied to survival. Now, I think there's some other issues of concerns to the Chinese government as well, the CCP. Once you give an AI agent to millions of people, they can customize it, they can use it how they like. You lose a lot of predictability. You're also effectively not gaining the full control or policing these devices, right? Do you now have to form a new sort of a stabilizing factor in like an AI police of some sort, right? So then you look at all of these issues now. This is not just about AI anymore. It's about how can you police, like could those AI systems be used to scale the firewall, collect real news or information from outside of censorship? Could those then be used to spread information, a mass emailing system done through AI 24/7, giving people in China real information? So there's a lot of potentials for this AI tool. I won't discredit that. But I just think the essence of what's happening right now is, well, It's just a bound for survival. So thanks for watching this episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and also check out Outscale's 2-day AI masterclass. The link is in the description. And once again, if you're watching on China Insider, please go and subscribe to David on China or David Zhang 360. Links will be in the description. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.